Round one. Uniform updates across all iPhones. No waiting. I have a GS3 and waited, months to get Jelly Bean, and now wait begins for Android 4.2. Okay, so this was actually a big comment on a lot of. It was just regurgitated every time. So I'm going to put this to rest once and for all on the updates on iOS versus Android, because honestly, most of you guys have been manipulated. And let me show you why. I actually did the full math on calculating how many Android devices are up to date and how many iOS devices are up to date. So let's go through the math, shall we? So, Android, first contender. We have 500 million devices activated in September. There is 1.3 million devices activated per day. Now, the point of this is that this has probably grown to probably like 1.5, 1.7, maybe even 2 million a day. But let's just, for the sake of trying to be fair to iOS, let's leave it at 1.3. That means that there's been 164 days since that announcement, which was September 5th, and that means that there was 213 new activation devices. So we have a total of approximately 713 million Android devices out today. iOS. In September, it was 400 million iOS devices. Now, before that, the last number we got was in March, and that was 316. So figuring that iOS kept the same trend, which does not show, because it does not show that iOS is growing as rapidly as they were before. So, but let's just, again, give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say they had 84 million new device activations. That would put iOS at 484 million, okay? So let's have the numbers right up here. So we have Android going at 713.2 million, and iOS going at 484 million. So let's match them up, shall we? So if we go as far back as iOS 6.0 and Android 4.0, iOS 6.0 has 345 million devices out with iOS 6.0 and up. And Android has 304 million devices with 4.0 and up. So that's pretty close, right? It's a lot closer than iOS 6 has 60% updates, where Android only has this many updates. So that was a lot of your reasoning. We get updates so quicker. Well, how about this? If you actually take the most recent update, so iOS, I'm even going to give iOS a little more than that, okay? I'm going to give iOS 6.01. So since that, of course, we have 6.1 and 6.1.1, okay? So since that, we had that. And in 6.01, there is 44 million devices. Well, how about Jelly Bean? Android 4.1. So Android 4.1 and 4.2, okay, are included in this. And it's really 4.1 because 4.2 is obviously still newer. So they both have the same kind of 6.1.1 just came out recently. All these 6.1 just came out recently. Is it fair? Okay, so that's what I'm giving it. I'm giving iOS 6.01 and Android 4.1. Android 4.1, there's actually 97 million Jelly Bean devices, which means on the newer platforms, Android has they have more than double new iOS devices. So to give you an idea of updates and which one is the newer operating system out, that's actual statistics. That's actual facts. So all these 60% and all this kind of stuff, you guys don't realize that iOS has been around for not only a lot longer, but they count all iPod touches for iOS devices. So take that into account when you're trying to figure all these numbers out and you're trying to say how big iOS is and all that. I told you guys, do your research. And when I mean do your research, I meant do your research to this extent. Because there's 97 million Jelly Bean devices out, and there's only 44 million devices out with iOS 6.01 and higher. Who's better at updating? But I digress, okay? So I just wanted to point out once and for all that was the end of all of these update sayings. and all of these competition, and I wanted to go with a knockout in the first round because obviously you guys don't know your research when it comes to updates and showing the math on how updates are done and which ones actually do more updates and which one has the newest operating system out of their own OSs. So that's facts, and that's the end of round one. Round two. Round two is going to be a quick round because this is from someone that just doesn't know anything. iOS has a better integration with Facebook and Twitter than Android. Okay, this is going to be very short and simple. iOS does not have a better integration for Facebook at all. I can't believe that was even brought up and even questioned. This is the type of comments that you typically get from an iOS person because they've never used Android. Android has had better integration for Facebook for years. iOS barely got Facebook integration, what, a year maybe finally? Or not even, probably less, a couple months. I want to say about 6 months or 7 months ago. They have not had this kind of integration for a long time. That was one of their big changes in the new OS. Was, now we have Facebook integration. Now we can share more easily our photos with Facebook. That's the reason Instagram became popular on iOS, by the way, was because you didn't have a way to easily upload your photos to Facebook. Why did Instagram take a while longer to become that popular on Android? Well, it's simply because we already had easy ways to share with all of our apps. If you go to a photo on an Android, you can share with any app you have. If you go to a photo and share on iOS, you can share with Facebook and Twitter. That's about it. So it's a lot different. You can share with so many more apps. It's a lot better for sharing your photos and files. There's just no contest between that. However, in terms of just Facebook, not only is the calendar synced, like iOS finally got, but our gallery is synced. So how you guys have a gallery, Android on our gallery, we actually see all of our Facebook albums in that gallery. That's real integration. That is real integration. Not this kind of like semi-integration that you guys finally got after a couple of years and you were all excited about. That's not integration. Android has the best Facebook integration by far. It's just not even a question. That's the end of round two. Alright, for round three we have a couple of different things. We have a couple of different comments. I'm going to go through them each. So the first one talks about, the lack of uniformity, that there's different things out there. The second one is Android apps can't run on certain devices. Third thing is, apps have a lot of poor design on Android, and then the last one is the malware. Okay, round three. So with this, let's go right into it. Android lacks uniformity. A lot of apps are not updated for the new Halo UI, and it's created inconsistencies. For example, the menu button HTC Sense. So what you're saying is that there's too many choices, and you don't like that, is what I'm hearing from you. In terms of it lacks uniformity, yeah, because there's choices. You can get HTC Sense, you can get Samsung, you can get LG, you can get Motorola. You have all these different ones to choose from. However, if one phone messes up, that's supposed to mess up the whole thing. On HTC Sense, don't get me wrong, I don't care for it that much. I think HTC has held Android back a little bit. They were great in the beginning. Obviously, they gave us the G1, the original phone. But in terms of updating, they have not stayed. They're kind of like Apple. They're falling behind. And that's what happens when, a company just doesn't listen to their people. So their new, the new Halo UI not being able to have the menu button, on everyone I've seen it has it, but I'm not sure if you're referring to a specific game or anything like that. I haven't seen an app that doesn't have the menu button. I've used plenty of HTCs and kind of troubleshooted a lot of them for people. So I'm not sure which one you're referring to, but everyone I've seen has had the menu button. Now, in terms of they can't run on certain devices, it's annoying when your app isn't compatible. So what would you rather have it be like? Like iOS, when it's an app for an iPhone and it is a little tiny app on your big iPad? Is that what you'd rather have? I'd rather have an app that works properly on the device when it's ready. And yes, there's a lot to choose from, but honestly, if you get a mainstream device like the S3 or Note 2, you don't get your devices compatible because it always is. So, I mean, it's just like iOS, you can obviously have the newer ones that sometimes do need, a better processor to run an app. So you do get that with iOS where either the app will crash or it won't work properly on an iPhone 4 because it was really made for either an iPad or it was made for an iPhone 5, which has a better processor. So you're going to get that if you get a top-of-the-line device, your apps are going to be compatible for it, plain and simple. In terms of apps are poorly designed compared to the iOS equivalent. Developers are lazy, even copy iOS icons. Actually, that's not true. Developers are actually growing for Android at a much quicker succession rate than iOS now. So what that means is not only are they doing apps for both platforms at the same time, but they're actually focusing more on Android because the trend has been that Android is outselling iOS now. So we've seen the growth rate for developers for Android has went up substantially, and the iOS developers are growing up still at their steady pace, but the latest statistics show that Android is actually getting more developers now than iOS. Store. Malware. So, this is really funny and really easy. This shows me you didn't do any research. Why? And you did a lot of comments. The reason why I can tell you didn't do research is because Android has 0.5% of the malware on their entire OS is from their Play Store. That's a fact. That's a statistic. So, before you talk about malware being on the store, it's actually not on the store. It's from black market app stores, things like that. When people sideload apps, things like that. Yeah, sure, they can get malware like that. Or, the traditional sense, how people normally get malware, the sites they shouldn't be going to, especially on their phone. I mean, I don't know who goes to those kind of sites on their phone. But those kind of things are going to give you malware. Yeah. So, it's not on the store. Do your research. And that's the end of round 3. Round 4. This one was a little more opinionated, but I'm still going to talk about it anyway. The SD argument is laughable. SD cards are stupid, plain and simple. Everything's going towards cloud storage. Average consumers don't bother with SD cards. They just can't access everything in the cloud. Or easier for consumers to pick other than any SD cards. You do not know what you're talking about. And if you want to know how I know that, you don't know HTC. The reason actually that most HTC phones have not been sold, such as I want to say the One X, the One S I believe does have expandable. No, I know the Droid DNA doesn't, and so the Droid DNA and the One X. The main reason why they don't sell actually is because they don't have expandable memory, and that's what customers do not want. They want an SD card. And why is SD cards still not going away because of your cloud storage? Well, don't get me wrong, I like cloud storage. I use all my music on cloud storage. However, Android has a huge advantage over iOS, and that is that they act as an external hard drive. So SD cards can actually be used to put whatever files you want on there. You can use documents on there, which, you might not want to, but you can. You can do videos on there, which you're not going to do on all cloud storages because videos are nice to have offline. So when you're on a plane or something like that, you can have your videos on there. Now, that's a huge factor. When I travel myself, I go on a plane for 4 hours and I watch a couple of episodes of TV shows. Now, I do use Google's cloud services as well to download videos to my device, as well as Flickster to download videos, digital copies that I've purchased. So, I do use cloud services as well. But no matter what, you're always going to want SD cards for the fact that it actually works as a storage device, which iOS does not have the ability to do. So that's why it makes a difference, and that's why SD cards are so important to a lot of consumers. Consumers will literally not buy a device because it's 16 gigs and not expandable. They won't buy it. 32 gigs not expandable? Maybe, but 16, not really. So there you go. Most consumers still worry about it, at least on the Android side. Obviously, iOS doesn't offer a lot of solution, so they're going to be stuck with that. But it still matters to a lot of consumers, and that's why when they buy Android, they do want to make sure it has expandable memory. And that's a fact. That was the end of round 4. Round 5. So this was a couple of opinionated stuff and all that, and again, just doing your research, guys. Let's go through it. So media storage, music, movies, TV shows, books, magazines, a lot more content on iOS's native media storage. Tablets, Android tablets are too wide, landscape, too tall portrait. Their phones are blown up with insufficient space. And internal storage, I know this supports SD cards, but you can't support apps and games on it. I want a Nexus, but it has low internal storage, no LTE, and crappy camera. Okay, so let's start with your first complaint. The media storage, you don't know what you're talking about. Plain and simple. Actually, the thing that I can't stand about iOS is that all the things you named are all in different stores. You have to go to iTunes to get your music. You have to go to videos to get your movies. You have to go to the newsstand to get your magazines. You have to go to iBooks to get your books. And you have to go to the App Store to get your apps. In Google, you go to the Google Play Store, and it's all there. Plain and simple. So it's actually a lot easier for one. Second, not only does Google match the content, even in apps, they both have over 750 million apps, but not only does they match the content, but they still actually match them in movies, TVs, and actually have a little bit more deals now with getting earlier releases compared to Apple in terms of TV shows as well as videos. Again, do your research, those kind of things, because then you'll find out more. All right, in terms of tablets, this is hilarious because you obviously don't know what Apple's going to do. So Apple is changing their OS to be 16 by 9. So those Android tablets you're complaining about is the future iPads. Apple is moving towards 16 by 9 iPads. So they will be the same kind of style of Android tablets. So the fact that you're saying they're too wide landscape and too tall portrait, that's actually funny because that's what the iPads will be like. So I'm really curious what you're going to say when that happens. Second of all, though, the point is that you actually have the same screen that you have on your computer. You actually have the same screen that you have on your TV. The reason why is because it's uniform. It's actually 16 by 9 all around. The only thing that was 4 by 3 was pictures, but even they are now being 16 by 9. Any photographer now is switching over to 16 by 9 for that reason, because every screen we put things on is a 16 by 9. We don't need 4 by 3 anymore. As an ex-photographer, I can tell you that was the trend a year and a half ago. So that's only going forward. In terms of, plus they run phone apps blown up to huge and insignificant use of space. Tablet doesn't run tablet apps, isn't a tablet. So this is my favorite this is actually another one of my favorite arguments from iOS. And again, it's just that people don't do their research. So Apple boasts a lot. They have 200,000 apps for 200 million, whatever it is. I always forget. 200 million apps for tablets for their iPad. They don't tell you what iPad it's for. It's not for the iPad 3 or the iPad 4. Actually, there's less than 5,000 Retina display apps, but you guys didn't know that. Apple does not have many Retina display apps. However, they do have a lot of apps that are designed for 1024 by 640 or 624, which was their original iPad and iPad 2 display, and their iPad mini. So when they're referring to that many tablet apps, that's how many they actually have. However, every Android device has been made for 1280 by 800 for the past year, as well as every app made this year, 2012 rather, was 1280 by 800 design. So actually, Android has a lot more tablet apps. They just don't boast it around a lot because they're for the resolution and they look better compared to most iPad apps. However, the real difference is that comparing the app, it might just be not made for a tablet, as in using like 3 layers. Say like for the Gmail app. The Gmail app uses 3 different layers, so it's perfectly designed for a tablet. The tablet will be designed for the resolution, but they might not be designed for the look of it. So that's the difference. And that's what I always want to clarify, because Android actually has more tablet apps for their majority of their tablets. Because the only tablets that are 1080 are very few. You have the Asus Prime, you have the Asus Prime, and then you have the Acer, and then you have the Nexus 10, which is obviously the best screen out in the market. So, yes, for those ones, they don't have as many tablet apps for their correct resolution. However, in terms of the majority of Android tablets on the market, they have more tablet apps than the new iPads do. So, sorry to burst your bubble. Internal storage. SD cards, I already explained that why they're still important for most consumers, and consumers who will not buy a product simply because of that reason. I want a Nexus, but it has low internal storage, no LTE, and crappy camera. I don't like the Nexus 4. I've said that before. You can say it's Android's flagship. I have said in my other channel already that I think it was a mistake that LG got it because they didn't do it properly. They didn't do it justice. Samsung, HTC, or Sony, I think, would have done a much better job. And that's the end of round 5. Round 6. This is actually from the same person, but different comments and different points. So let's go through them. In order to get LTE on Android, you must get carrier bloatware. There's painful updates. Siri is better for phone stuff like calling, texting, emailing, reminders, appointments. Is there a single Android device that can match the iPhone and iPad in build quality? Lack of good out-of-the-box browser, Chrome lags, I don't use Dolphin, and updates. The only way to be sure is to get the Nexus. Alright, let's go over these. So, in order to get an Android phone, you have to get bloatware. It's painful and all that. So, what is bloatware doing to you? Is it hurting you? Is it giving you nightmares? But what is bloatware doing to you? Because it seems like it's painful, so I want to know. Actually, yeah, you have built-in software that most people don't use. Yes, carriers get away with this, but it's honestly not that big of a deal, because especially with Android's new task managers, like on the S3 and the Note 2, it kills all of those bloatware apps running in the background. So they're not really hurting you or doing any kind of painful things to you anymore. So with these new task managers, like this ones the Samsung has, they're really not becoming as much of an issue as they once were. So yeah, that was the main problem with bloatware, is just really the slowdown. I think an app being there doesn't really affect you that much, especially when you can even hide it on the app drawer with, again, phones like the S3 and the Note 2. So yeah. Siri, honestly, is not better than anything about Google Now. Now, you did say that it was better. Google Now was better at pretty much everything else, but at emails, reminders, all that kind of stuff, Google Now does it just fine now too. So I'm guessing you haven't seen the latest updates. You did your research a bit more on that one, so kudos to you on that. But there's nothing that Siri can do better. Not to mention the translating itself, so getting your right voice to what you say. Siri is only right 4 out of 10 times, whereas Google Now is right 8.5 out of 10 times. So, is there a single Android device that can match iPhone and iPad on build quality? Honestly, I mean, build quality is always, subjective. For one, I don't care for either of their designs. The iPad, I feel, first of all, aluminum will always make sure that you do not get a strong Wi-Fi signal, as plastic, polycarbonate, all these different kind of materials will give you. Any tech in the world can tell you that. You get better strength signal if you don't have aluminum surrounding your entire Wi-Fi antenna. That's just plain and simple. Especially when it's that small. If it's the size of like a laptop, then you can get away with it more. But if it's that small, it's just not going to happen correctly. That's why actually Android tablets like the Samsungs or like the Nexuses will get a better signal strength in comparison to the iPad. Anytime, I've had this many times happen at the studio where I've been recording, the iPad drops the signal and the Samsung is still going strong. So in terms of build quality, my idea of build quality is build quality that works better and doesn't have a little death grip. Just saying. But if you want those kind of materials, there are devices like the Nexus, like the Sony, that use glass materials, that use aluminum, like the Huawei phones and ZTE and all that kind of stuff. I mean, they're out there. It's just that's not the most concern for people is the build quality. Really, they rather have more features. Reason being that a lot of reviewers in my profession didn't care for the Galaxy S3 build quality because it's plastic, and not to mention polycarbonate's more durable than most aluminum if you actually know your materials as well. But the fact that you had this kind of supposedly cheap material that a lot of reviewers originally said, yet the S3 outsold the iPhone and every other phone in the world last year. So again, it's not all, I mean, you can say it's build quality, but obviously build quality is the most important thing to everyone. So, and then Chrome doesn't lag. I don't know if you're using it possibly on a device that has a Tegra 3 processor, that lags. That lags on any browser. That lags on any browser, really. But I mean, Chrome browser is going to be the quickest one. And I think it was you or someone else that said there's no browser that's faster than Safari on Android's entire OS. Actually, there's been plenty of proof, and Naked Browser's one. There's a lot of browsers out there that beat iOS, and that. Dolphin actually has a beta that runs the fastest HTML5 in the mobile world. So again, just do your research, guys. Updates, the only way to be sure is on the Nexus. Already went over that, and that's the end of round 6. Round 7. I think this was the same person again. So we're just kind of going through a couple rounds together, seeing who wins. All right, so optimization, the Nexus 10 high resolution, then the iPad, but a lot of apps aren't made for it, for 1280 by 800, or maybe even 800 by 480. Multi-gestures on the iPad are awesome. Accessories, get a ton of them for the iPhones because they're mainstream. And the best and biggest apps are for the iPhone first. Okay. So I've kind of answered all of these questions here and there, but let me just go on a couple of them. So for the Nexus 10, yes, the Nexus 10 is the newest Android 10-inch tablet, and yes, I'll give you that not as many apps are made for that kind of resolution. In fact, the ones that are still 1080p, so they're not made by 2650 by 1600. Most of them aren't made for that. They're made by 920 by 1800. Or 1200. They're made by 1900 by 1200. So, they're made for that. But, on the other hand, what that screen is made for really is more so for, honestly, to watch. It's more so to watch for videos. It's more so for reading, clarity. And that's what that screen is more made for. So even if they are 1080p, the human eye really can't tell the difference between 1080p and that much higher in everything. Now, I can tell the difference, obviously, when watching a video and everything like that, when it moves fast. So theoretically, I should be able to tell the difference when watching that. I have trained eyes, though, as well. So in terms of the apps, again, it goes back to most people don't know how many apps are actually for the Retina display, and the latest showed in this past November that it was between 5,000 and at the most 10,000 now. So out of the 200,000 apps that were out there, only that many are there. Sorry. In terms of multi-gestures for the iPad, you can actually get Android gestures that actually do the same exact thing. From doing even actually more. You can have ones that curve around. You can have ones that do 2 fingers down, 2 fingers up, all these kind of different ones. So you can actually have a lot of gestures on Android that use that, and the apps are free. So accessories, you get a ton of them with the iPhones because they're mainstream. Actually, you get just as many accessories with the Galaxy S3. Now, this is the first phone to really challenge it, but that's why I'm showing you that the whole point of this was show you that most people's perceptions are still with the old Android. And, the 2.3, 2.1, the phones that didn't have one phone that sold near the iPhone. Now we're in an age where one Android phone is outselling all iPhones, and that's the Galaxy S3. The Galaxy S3 has outsold it, and they really have more accessories out, really, compared to the iPhone 5. Now, in terms of the 4S and 4, of course they still have more accessories because they were out longer. And you can make that same statement, well, the Galaxy S3 might have more accessories because of the fact that it, came out before the iPhone 5. That's true, and that's a good argument for it. But it's still the fact that you have, just for one device, that many accessories. So the Galaxy S3 has become the mainstream for Android, and that's the one people are really concentrating on. Unfortunately, a lot of you guys keep bringing up the Nexus, but the Nexus isn't the Android flagship, to be honest. It's the one that Google makes the flagship, but the people decide which one's the flagship, and that has been the Galaxy series. The best and biggest apps hit iPhone first. I already explained that more developers are actually going for Android now, and they're developing for apps to come out at the same time. Another person had said at one point, like, Temple Run 2, and that came out the same day for both. I think it came out the same day for both, and basically it was just, actually could be wrong on that one. But basically it was developed for both at the same time, and they come out. So both of them are getting it, and again, even on basic screens like the iPhone compared to the Galaxy series, you have a non-HD screen versus an HD screen. So that's the main complaint that I would have about, my apps are coming out for phone. Well, they're such poor quality that they have to be upscaled to get to Android instead of being downscaled for iOS. And that's the end of that round. Round 8. Now this was a cocky round, so let's go right into it. If you get a new iPhone, you lost your phone, you have the ability to automatically download every app and install with one click. Aside from the Nexus, iPhone has way longer term. The iPhone 4 was released in June 2010 and is now 2013, and you can say any Android device is much older than a year. iPhones have way more accessories available. Can I take my iTunes card now? Thanks. No. That was pretty funny that you thought like that would stump me or something, like you had it all planned out and that you were that good. And your, by the way, your badgering of one of my other viewers saying that I doubt you're qualified to argue on behalf of Android, and that you know what the F you're talking about because you own a Windows device, 3 Android devices, and 2 iOS devices. Well, apparently you don't know how to use the Android devices. Sorry, but for the first one, I do know what you're talking about. You're talking about backing up and restoring your product. Guess what? Android's been able to do that since it came out, at least since the Droid 1, which was how many years ago now? So yes, since the Droid 1, I have not needed to reinstall my apps, because they reinstall for me. As soon as I sign into my account, Android tells me, do you want me to restore your apps? And it does it automatically on all my devices since I got my Droid 1, Droid Charge, Nexus, S3. All of my apps have been downloaded for me. So I'm not really sure what you're talking about unless you don't know how to restore it and back it up properly. I do have 2 videos on how to do that though, so that you can feel free to watch. Aside from the Nexus, you have phones that are out that long. That's not a good thing that the iPhone 4 is still sold. I don't know why you were trying to spin it like it was a cool thing, and that you can't say that for any Android device that's much older than a year, that it's still being sold. Well, let me put it this way. If you have to only have one device a year, then of course you're going to try to make that device last as long as you can. So you'll try to make it last 3 years. The problem is most people that are buying iPhone 4s now will be disappointed in about 6 months or a year, or even less. The reason why is because it's running slow. Ever since the new OS updates have been coming out, the reason why people don't like to update to it as much as iOS tries to make you believe they do is simply because of the fact that it makes your device run slow. Things like the iPhone 4 should not have things like Passbook on them. it's not made to run two apps at the same time. Most most iPhone 4 users are complaining about the new OS and just simply don't update to it if they're new to it now, because it's not made for it. So I guess if you're okay with sticking behind with an update and not getting your updates, which was one of your arguments as well, if you're okay with doing that, then you could keep your phone or buy a new phone that's relatively worthless now. But here's the thing. Android devices do come out more often, so you actually get better phones every year. So instead of getting an iPhone 4 for free or getting a 4S, these are outdated devices. You can get a newer device that works better for the same price. So why was your argument you can get a 3-year-old phone or a new phone for the same price? And you were trying to make that a positive spin on it. That's what I didn't understand. And iPhone has way more accessories available. I've already said the S3 actually has more accessories available. And the thing and here's the thing, especially in the US, we get this misconception that iPhone has, is king of accessories and everything like that. It's actually not always king of accessories, especially like I said with the iPhone 5. The Galaxy S3 has been out longer, so in stores we might see more iPhone cases, but the actual accessories made for it, the S3 beats it. So yeah, just saying. Again, do your research, and sorry, but those weak things that you said that, you knew what you were talking about, looks like you need to do a little bit more research, and you won't be getting that iTunes gift card after all. That was the end of this round. Now for another round. Average consumers don't tweak their phones on XDA, therefore they need the perfect experience. Since Android is tossed around like some dirty girl experience, well, I'll skip a little bit about that. Also, the iPhone doesn't need extra stuff. Most unused feels more superior. So basically what this person is saying is that when you get the iPhone, you know what you get, and that Android is just passed around and changed and all this kind of stuff. And you're trying to say that basically because it's simplified, it's somehow better. And that's obviously always an opinion, the simplicity versus the customization. That's always the greatest, argument. Well, iOS is easier. Well, Android is, more customizable. Actually, Android can be both. Simply how I always show people is like, oh, if you want iOS, you just go to the app drawer, and there's iOS. There's the entire interface of iOS. So in terms of it being simpler or easier to use, you can actually just show a person the app drawer, and they'll go there every time if they don't want to do the whole customization of Android. Yet they'll always have the ability to do that. So that's the key. With Android, you can get the best of both worlds. With iOS, you just get an outdated world. And in terms of your second argument was just on the, iOS is, 60% of the OS is on iOS 6 and everything like that. I showed you the actual numbers and statistics, and now you know better. That's the end of that round. Okay, now this argument's nice. It's the 10th round, and this one's nice. It's actually from an Android fan, and they're talking about how iOS has full control over the software. So, you get the same experience, same function, efficient, pleasing programs, apps, features, and of course he, made reference, Apple Maps notwithstanding, right out of the box to, and you don't need to learn how to root it or anything like that. See, there's the thing. There's this misconception about Android users that we root all our devices. I actually know how to root perfectly. I've rooted over 30 devices. So I've actually rooted plenty of devices for other people. My current 3 phones, none of them are rooted. I don't need to root any of them. So here's the thing. Most people think that you have to be a techie to have an Android, or it's great for the techies, and that's what iOS tries to make you believe. Here's the thing. Most people actually don't need to root anymore on Android. There was 2 reasons why people rooted. The first one was to get stock Android. Oh, I want to get a stock Android experience because they didn't like what some of you brought up. Oh, the variants. The thing is with new interfaces such as TouchWiz UX, so not the old TouchWiz that was horrible, I'm with you guys on there, the TouchWiz UX, which is actually preferred by a lot of people over stock Android, you have features that stock Android doesn't have. So you have features like pop-up play, S-Beam, all these different features that you can't use on other devices. So here's the thing, without that interface, you're actually going kind of backwards. And that's why I know a lot of people with the S3 or the Note 2 that don't root, simply because they actually enjoy that experience better than stock Android. 2, the other reason people used to root was to have free hotspot. You don't need to do that on Android. You have Foxfi, which I've done a couple of videos on, and you no longer need to root to have a hotspot. So that was the other person people rooted. Now, a lot of people believe that you have to root to get free apps, because on jailbreaking you have to do that to get free apps for iOS. Actually, Android does not require rooting to get free apps. You can simply get free apps. It's called sideloading, and you can do that without rooting. So, again, you don't need to be a techie and all that kind of stuff to do that kind of stuff. So, sideloading is very simple, and anyone can do it just as anyone can do jailbreaking on iOS. So, again, that argument's always really faulty. In terms of the experience being refined and everything like that, the problem with the argument of one manufacturer doing everything, it was great in the PC world. That argument was great in the PC world. One manufacturer does the operating system, hardware, everything is together. That was great in the PC world. This is the mobile world. Mobile world moves a lot quicker than the PC world. We have freaking Octa processors coming out in the mobile world at a consumer level, which we still don't have on a PC level. So this moves really quickly, a lot compared to how the PC world moves. So the reason why that's actually not good is because that's why Apple's behind. That's why they don't have things like NFC, Wi-Fi Direct. They barely got LTE after 2 years. You have all these problems and all these outdated technology on iOS and with iPhones and with iPads. So this is the problem with Apple. They're falling behind because it's one company doing everything. Whereas on Android, you have Google doing all the software, and they spend all their time dedicated to the software. And you have Samsung dedicating it purely hardware. And that's why those two companies get the best of both. Now, here's the trick. That now, Samsung is beginning to have their own software and putting it on top of Google, and it being a better experience than just a skin. So it's actually a better experience than we had before. So that's the real thing that is really great. And again, you made a comment on, TouchWiz is so horrible to run the skin. Honestly, you probably haven't used the new TouchWiz. It really is so much better. Like I said, I agree with you guys on the old TouchWiz and the old Sense. Well, Sense I still don't care for personally, but the old Sense was a lot worse than compared to the newer one. It's really different. So just, stay up to date, guys, and I promise you'll be a lot happier. All right, we're at the 11th round. Getting close to the end, guys. Getting close to the end. New apps come out first. So this was the one that I was talking about earlier. For new apps work predictably on iOS, i.e. Temple Run 2. I honestly don't remember which came out first. I should have checked on that first before this. I believe Temple Run did come out on iOS. It might have come out a couple days, but it was not like a month or something like that. It was like a couple days. But I thought it came out the same day, but I could be wrong on that. So I will give you that. Now, in terms of working predictably, I'm not sure what you mean by that. I've actually seen reviews of Temple Run 2 on an iPhone 5 and on S3, and the S3 looks a lot better. And simply because it's an HD screen, whereas the iPhone isn't. So I'm not sure what you mean by running predictably, and it didn't run bad, it didn't run choppy either, it ran perfectly fine and smooth. So I think that people have this perception of iOS being more stable and having that. And here's the thing, so working predictably, I want to go on this. Most people don't know this, but iOS, since iOS 6 and since Android 4.0, Android 4.0 crashes less statistically compared to iOS 6. Again, guys, this is most people just not doing their research. iOS 6 crashes a lot. iOS crashes a lot. If you haven't used the new iOS 6 and 6.1, and you telling me that it never crashes, then you don't know what a crash on iOS is. I've used iOS devices for less than 15 minutes with opening the device, and it crashes on me several times. So I know it crashes, and I know you guys think that it doesn't. But when it closes the app and goes to the home screen, that's a crash. I know it doesn't tell you it crashes, like Android tells you. Unfortunately, this has stopped working. It tells you. Android has become so much more stable on 4.0 and even more so on 4.1 that it just doesn't crash. And I know you guys haven't used it because you're still talking about Android being inconsistent and crashing and all that. It doesn't anymore. It really doesn't. So just, again, stay up to date with the times. And the final round, guys. All right. So this person actually thinks that Android is the better OS overall. There's two reasons why he thinks why iOS could be considered better. And he says much more apps and number of apps are optimized for iOS tablet. And he actually acknowledged that this may not be the same this year. So, for the first one, much more apps for iOS. That's actually false. Both stores have 700,000 apps now, or you guys know what I mean, 700,000 million apps now, so they're both actually tied for the most apps. They're not, they're trying to count the numbers and whatnot. We'll probably hear it at the next I/O, Google I/O, and Apple World Conference, and we'll see the newest numbers. But for as of right now, they're both more than 750,000 million. So yes, they're both there. In terms of numbers of apps optimized for tablet, I went over this. Actually, it's something that Apple has said a long time, and it's really false. Their tablet apps are made for 1024 by 624. So tablet optimized is not optimized for your current iPads out on the market. For your Retina display iPad, it's not made for that. It's made for the iPad mini and the iPad 2. So that's it, guys. After a couple of rounds, going back who was the winner in the end, guys? Out of all these fights, out of all these back and forths, Android's still looking like it's the top. And this is why I wanted to show you guys this. Wanted to bring to you guys that a lot of you guys don't know all the statistics behind it, a lot of you guys don't know all the numbers behind it, and that's what I wanted to show you guys. Thank you for watching. Feel free to leave comments, as I know you will. This has been RICKY, the Android Guy.